Morning, everybody. It's Keeper Eric here alongside our zoo social media guru Anthony doing the filming. And we haven't done one of these in a while because the zoo is now open, and we took last week kind of to figure out how things were going, see how our timing was going to work out with guests here for the first time in 3 months. As you can see, I'm wearing my mask because everybody who comes to the zoo needs to be wearing a mask and keep it on. And it's hot today, but if I can keep it on while I do my keeper talk, I know you guys can keep it on when you visit the zoo as well. So today we're going to talk about our red wolves. We haven't seen them in a little bit, and that is our male, our adult male. He's the dad to the two young ones, and I'm going to throw him one of these quail. So he's got something to do while we're talking. And then the two boys are in the back. Let's see if I can get one of these quail to... Let's see. We'll wait till he gets a little closer. Now, they do form a little pack, Dad and the two boys we have here. And Dad is the dominant one, so he's going to try to take all of the resources, which in this case is the quail. If he can get all three in his mouth and protect them, he will. Hit the tree. So as he moves around, he'll drop them, and the younger males will pick them up. And sometimes he lets them go, and sometimes he wants to be in charge and will chase them away. So we'll see what happens if everybody gets their own quail, or if we're going to have a little bit of a fight here. You did notice he kind of rubbed his head on that one. That's a pretty typical response when we give the wolves something, especially something that has a scent to it. Just like your dog will roll around in something in the yard, same thing. Get the scent on them, they get their scent on it, and lets everybody know that they are around. The wolves do mark their territory. I'll notice that if one of them goes to the bathroom in a certain spot, a lot of times the others will go in that same spot as well. Try to kind of cover it up or add to it, depending on who it is. Our male, his name is Loki. He's still the one closest to us. He's about 7 years old, which is middle-aged for a wolf. They get to be 14 or 15 maybe. The boys who are hiding in the back, they're 2 years old. So they're fairly young still. Usually when they are about a year, Mom and Dad will kick them out and make them leave, maybe 15 months. So a red wolf pack is not as large as a gray wolf pack, especially the northern ones. There's not as big of prey where they live, so they're mostly hunting rabbits and maybe a deer, and that's not going to feed a whole lot of wolves at one time. Whereas the northern wolves will hunt caribou or bison or something really large, and that you can feed a whole bunch of wolves on with a bison. So they're gonna have a smaller pack. It's just gonna be Mom and Dad, and then any pups they've had for the year we're in, and then the pups from the last year hang around long enough to see their brothers and sisters raised, and that's one way to for them to learn how to be parents, is to watch what their parents did with their siblings. Red wolves are native to the southeastern United States, and there are a few in the wild right now. So back in the 70s, there were very few red wolves left, and the ones that were left were captured and brought into captivity to breed them. And then when they got a suitable amount in the late 80s, early 90s, they started re-releasing them into mostly North Carolina. They tried a couple of other sites, the Smoky Mountains in South Carolina, which did not work quite as well. And the program was going really good for a while, but the state of North Carolina and the people in the area do not like the wolves. So they've put, they took away the restrictions for night hunting on coyotes. And you can see these guys are slightly larger than a coyote, especially in the summer. They look very similar. So if you see something outside at night, you can shoot it. And if you mean to shoot a coyote, that's fine. If you mean to shoot a wolf, you can just say you're shooting a coyote. And so the wild population has dropped considerably within the past 5 years. There used to be well over 100 wolves in the wild, and that's been diminished to maybe 15 or 20 even. So there's not a whole lot left in the wild. Hopefully somebody who does want the wolves, the state will step up and allow the government to start a release program there. They're really cool animals. They are not as aggressive as gray wolves. They would rather run from us than fight us. So when we're here in the exhibit, it's not any sort of safety issue. When we get them cornered, the first thing they do is cower down. They don't try to fight their way out generally. So they're not an animal that's gonna attack your kids. They're probably not going to take your livestock, especially if you're raising cattle. So they're really a neat animal to have in the wild. So hopefully somebody at some point will start a program to release them again. We getting some questions?
So far we haven't had any questions.
That's all right. I didn't talk about red wolves for a long time.
Just a bunch of people saying good morning.
Good morning. Like I said, red wolves generally eat smaller prey. So here at the zoo, we will find that they've caught some small things and eaten them. Mice and voles and shrews, things like that. Rabbits. They will catch and eat raccoons or opossums if they get in here. One of the coolest things is somehow a hawk flew in here and didn't make it out in time, and so we came in one day and we're cleaning and found just part of a hawk, some of the wings and part of the bones. So they did like that. These guys are pretty general. They'll eat almost anything. The quail I gave them today are frozen, so that's why you see him working at it a little bit, because it's rock hard and he's got to use those teeth to break it down to the point where they can swallow it. They chew their food to the point where they can rip off chunks and swallow the chunks. If they get something really small like a mouse, they might swallow it whole, but something like a rabbit, they're gonna rip a hunk of it off, break it down, break the bones down enough that they can swallow it and start with another chunk.
We did have somebody ask, are these in your zoo or are you filming outside?
No, we're actually here in Miller Park Zoo, in the park, in the city. So if we're lucky, maybe we'll have a large truck go by and you can hear how close we are to Morris Avenue, which was actually once part of Route 66. Fun fact about the zoo. I think we're the only zoo whose, whose boundaries actually touch Route 66. There's a lot of zoos in cities and towns that are on Route 66, but none of them actually were physically next to the route. So that's another fun fact about Miller Park Zoo.
We did have somebody ask, if there's no release program, then do you just share with other zoos and breeding programs?
Yes. So like a lot of the animals here at the zoo, they are part of a species survival program. And that entails somebody keeping track of all of the animals in that species in zoos. And then somebody else, or maybe sometimes the same person, looking at those numbers and deciding who should be breeding with who based on what sort of space we have, based on genetics. So the past few years we haven't bred, and actually we got rid of all of our females, so we made sure that wouldn't happen. Because red wolves are pretty much filled up all the space we have for them in zoos right now. There's not a lot of open space to put wolves. So if we breed them, we know they're going to a different zoo, but if other zoos don't have space, we can't put them anywhere. So Usually that plan comes out every year in July or August. So we have our fingers crossed that some space opens up and that we can get either another female for this male or maybe a different pair altogether, or even luckier would be a female for one of the two boys. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens. And
Michaela wanted to know, is it ever a health concern when they catch wild animals that come into the exhibit?
It always is. It's not, we don't intentionally feed them wild animals. All of the animals we feed, all of the prey animals we feed at the zoo are previously frozen. So we get them from a supplier, and the freezing will kill off any of the diseases or parasites they might get. But yeah, anytime there's like a wild raccoon in here, that could be an issue. We do vaccinate these guys every year. So they get a rabies vaccination, they get distemper, kind of like your dog would. We give them heartworm medicine every month, so they don't get heartworm.
Somebody wanted to know what it would take to create a release program.
It's gonna take a state working with the federal government probably to set aside some land and enact some protections for these animals. So originally when they started releasing these wolves, they did it in a place right off the Outer Banks of North Carolina called the Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge. And it's a pretty large area, and there's a couple other wildlife refuges in the same place, but there's also a ton of farmland around there. So the wolves, of course, don't stay in their boundaries of the National Wildlife Park. They're National Wildlife Refuge, excuse me. And so they go everywhere. And so that's where the conflict came in, is they will go to farms, they will hang around farms, and there are people that live there. And a lot of the people are just afraid of wolves, and no one was ever able to convince them that the wolves were there not to harm them or cause problems, but they're just gonna exist. They don't take a lot of deer, they're not gonna affect the hunting of the area. So it's gonna take someplace where the public is not afraid of them and the state wants to work with them. And one of the other problems is that the wolves want to interbreed with coyotes. One of the reasons they chose Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge was that there were very few coyotes, if any, there at the time. But since then they have moved in. So if you're not careful, you will get hybrids where a wolf and a coyote breed together. And we need to make sure that's not going to happen. So we're going to have some sort of trap and spay-neuter coyotes to make sure that they're not interbreeding with the wolves.
You asked that question, you answered that question right as somebody asked it. That was, okay. You saw that one coming.
Yeah. So red wolves and coyotes are fairly closely related. There's been a lot of debate as to whether red wolves by themselves are just a hybrid of the two. And you've got to go back a couple thousand years before you can say that they were exactly let's see. They may have been hybrids at one point. They probably have some genes from each in them, but generally you're not seeing coyotes and wolves breeding just to make a red wolf. You can't just put the two together and say you have a red wolf. The red wolves do have a distinct genome from coyotes and wolves. Miller Park Zoo has had a ton of success breeding these guys in the past 15 years or so. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 litters, I believe, in the past 15 years, if I'm not mistaken. One of those litters we did try to re-release into the wild, and you do that not by releasing adults, but by finding a mom who's got a den with pups and just mixing the pups with the pups she already has, the pups from the zoo with the pups she has. So you put them on a plane and you fly them down to North Carolina, and the biologists there are amazing. They radio collar all the wolves, and they generally know approximately where they are, so they can find that mom, know where that den is, and they can just put the pups in that den, and she'll just foster them and raise them as if they were her own. So you can take a mom with 3 or 4 pups, put 3 or 4 more in, and suddenly you've got twice as many pups that you're raising in the wild. The pups that we released were never heard from again. They were microchipped, so if they were ever caught, we'd be able to tell who they were. But as far as we know, they were never caught, found again. So it's possible the mom either never raised them or they died of something when they were young. We'll never know. But it was a cool thing that we did, and it does prove that zoos are here to help conserve animals. We're not just here to show people what they look like, but we're doing our part to save these animals too. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up. You guys can watch the wolves while I talk a little bit more. In the chance that you were hoping to have your name drawn for that necklace that Grace had made, we are still planning on doing that drawing. We've been so busy with opening that we haven't had a chance to do many lives, so don't despair if you donated to the live a couple weeks ago. You're still in the running. We will make sure that you are your name gets put in for that. Anyone who donates to the zoo from our live feed through the video will be entered into a drawing for that necklace. So if you want to donate today, you'll have a chance to have your name drawn. And remember, the zoo is open. I think I said that before, but we're open from 9 till 4. Is that right? 4 o'clock?
And we'll do members at 4:30.
Members at 4:30. Okay. So yeah, just you have to make a reservation. You have to wear a mask. Other than that, you can come out and see the zoo. And hopefully, before it gets too hot, you can come out. Last thing is we have some virtual camp classes that you can sign up for through our site or the Parks and Rec site. So there's virtual animal crackers and virtual, what's the other
Zoo
one?
Kids.
Zoo Kids.
So from 3 to 5 is animal crackers, and 6 and 7-year-olds is Zoo Kids.
There you go. So those are classes you can take without even having to leave your own house. Hopefully next summer all this will be behind us and we can have them here at the zoo again. That would be a wonderful plan. But thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. And tune in Wednesday at 10:30. We're gonna have a real special announcement. It's gonna be really cool. So tell your friends Wednesday at 10:30. See you then.